Back in the mid-2000s, you didn't even have to know what Unreal Engine was. You just knew the games felt good. Gears of War, BioShock, Mass Effect 2, those were all Unreal Engine 3. And they didn't just look great for the time. They played smooth. No weird hitching, no crashing mid-cutscene, no jank that pulled you out of the experience. Just solid movement, stable frame rates, and games that felt like they were built on purpose. The engine didn't get in the way. In fact, you barely noticed it was there. And that's kind of the point. You see, Unreal had this reputation, not just for being powerful, but for being reliable. Studios trusted it, and players didn't have to think about it. And that's when you know the tech is doing its job. Then, in 2014, Epic did something huge. They dropped Unreal Engine 4 and made it free. Not a trial, not some stripped down version, the full engine. Zero cost up front, just 5% if your game made money. And that changed everything. Now, indie devs suddenly had access to the same tools as the big studios, and it didn't take long for people to start doing some crazy stuff with it. Rocket League was made by a team of 10. PUBG started as a mod and became a global phenomenon. Fortnite switched to Battle Royale, ran on Unreal Engine 4, and kind of took over the world. These weren't just cool indie projects, they were massive hits. But here's the thing, they also worked. Rocket League was hitting 60 FPS on the PS4 at launch. PUBG was rough, sure, but it wasn't the engine's fault, at least not all of the time. In Fortnite, it scaled from iPhones to high-end PCs without breaking. It felt like the engine had your back, and that's the Unreal I came to trust. Maybe you did too. So when Epic showed off Unreal Engine 5 in 2020 and dropped that Lumen in the Land of Nanite demo running in real time on a PS5, I mean, look at it. It looks amazing. But more than that, it felt like almost like a promise. No more baking lights, no more stressing over poly counts. You focus on creativity, Epic said, and we'll handle the tech. It didn't just feel like another update. It felt more like a full reset, a leap forward. This isn't just a new engine. They are pitching the future. And then in 2021, they doubled down with The Matrix Awakens, which is a fully walkable open world, real-time lighting, cinematic facial animation, and thousands of AI cars, all running live on a PlayStation 5. No pre-rendering, no smoke and mirrors. It looked like the real deal. And for a second, it felt like everyone believed again. We were all excited about it. We couldn't wait to see what the next thing that Epic was going to do. Ark Survival Ascended, Jedi Survivor, Lords of the Fallen, the day before. And yeah, they looked amazing. But something felt off. The stutters, the shaders compiling mid-boss fight, the traversal hitching, it was all back. Only now it was happening in $70 games. Instead of feeling next gen, the engine felt like it was barely holding things together. So I started digging. I went back through the tech talks, post-mortems, patch notes, anything I could find that might explain the disconnect between the promise and the reality. And what I found was complicated, because it's not just that UE5 is hard to use, and it's not just that studios are doing it wrong. There are some real technical leaps here, and real issues too. Some people say Unreal Engine 5 is ahead of its time. Others say it's actively ruining games. So today, we're digging into one of the biggest questions in gaming history. What happened to Unreal Engine 5? By the way, if you're into deep dives on game tech, animation, and the chaos of modern game design and the stories all around this space, hit subscribe. It helps with the algorithm, and yeah, I like watching the number go up. We are so close to 500,000 subs, and it would be cool to have you along for the ride. Now, Unreal Engine 5 didn't just add a few cool new features. It quietly flipped the entire playbook. At first glance, it looked like a normal upgrade. Better graphics, new tools, faster rendering, but once I started digging, it felt like Epic had pulled the foundation out from under everything. Unreal Engine 3 and Unreal Engine 4 were upgrades. You had to learn some new tricks, sure, but the core stuff still worked. You could bring your old pipeline, your optimization logic, your LODs, your streaming systems. It was an evolution. But Unreal Engine 5, it broke things people didn't expect to be breakable. The moment a studio switched over, they weren't just using a new engine, they were rewriting how their entire game got made. Lighting was rethought from the ground up. Polycounts, they're practically irrelevant now, which meant old asset workflows don't apply. And level streaming, which is something that a lot of teams had custom built solutions for, gone, replaced. Whether it made sense for a project or not. Even studios that had been working in Unreal for years suddenly felt like they were back at square one. Now, big studios, they could adapt. They had the engineers, the tooling teams, the budget for trial and error. They could afford to rebuild pipelines and throw an R&D department at it for 6 months. But smaller teams, for them, Unreal Engine 5 wasn't just powerful. It was overwhelming. You weren't just learning how to use it. You were trying to figure out what assumptions Epic had already made for you. And here's the thing most players never see. A lot of this is shipped without clear documentation. The features were there, the promise was real, but no one was standing next to you going, hey, don't do it that way. That'll break everything. And that is where the cracks started to show. Nanite said, just drop in your full resolution assets. The engine will handle it. But it didn't exactly warn you that some topology, like dense triangles, bad UVs, could tank performance if you weren't careful. Lumen was Unreal's big lighting reset. No baking, no real-time global illumination, real reflections, right? But good luck if your game uses fog, glass, or emissives. That stuff still needs workarounds, and most devs didn't know that until their lighting looked off and they had no idea why. And world partition, it sounded like magic. We'll stream your open world for you. But then it misjudged a loading zone, which it absolutely did all the time. You'd get massive traversal hitches, sometimes right in the middle of a boss fight. That's what took me a while to realize. Maybe these games weren't broken just because Unreal Engine 5 didn't work. Maybe they were broken because the old instincts didn't apply anymore, and the engine, it didn't wait for anyone to catch up. One of the biggest promises Epic made with Unreal Engine 5 was that polycounts were finally a thing of the past. In their tech demos, they showed billion triangle assets, sculptures ripped straight from film production, running smoothly on a standard PlayStation 5. No LODs, no decimated meshes, no baking normal maps to fake detail. You just dropped in the high resolution model and the engine figured out the rest. That was Nanite, and to a lot of developers, it felt like a miracle. To players, it sounded like the end of Pop-In Forever. No more PlayStation 2 trees in the distance that suddenly snap into ultra quality the second you get close. The pitch was simple. Nanite handles it all. It takes care of the streaming, the culling, the level of detail, everything in real time, and on paper, it was a game changer. But the reality is a lot messier, because while Nanite can render billions of triangles without blinking, all of that data still has to live somewhere. And hardware, especially on consoles, still has limits. Take Ark Survival Ascended, for instance. It leaned heavily into Nanite's strengths. Dense forests, photogrammetry, massive open levels, packed with high-resolution assets. But the deeper players explored, the more performance started to shut down. Reports came in of memory spikes, traversal hitches, and in some cases, full crashes, just from walking into these heavily forested and dense forest biomes. And worst of all, this is happening on rigs that should have handled Unreal Engine 5 with absolutely no problem. And that's when it became clear. Nanite isn't magic. It's more like a precision machine. And unless your entire game is structured around how it works, you're gonna run it off the track. And there's more. Nanite comes with limitations that a lot of teams didn't fully realize until they were already deep into production. At the time of release, Nanite didn't initially support translucent materials. So if your game used fog, glass, water, or any kind of see-through effect, you're back to traditional methods. It also doesn't play well with deformable meshes, which means things like animated characters, props, and facial rigs still have to follow the old rules. Hair, foliage, cloth, same story, not supported natively. And even though it handles geometry beautifully, its streaming system can still hammer performance if you're not careful about how you structure your world. So instead of simplifying production, a lot of teams found themselves juggling two completely separate pipelines. One for Nanite, and one for everything Nanite couldn't touch. Suddenly, that dream of just drop in your high-res model started collapsing into bug reports, performance tickets, and long nights of trying to figure out why your level was stuttering every time someone walked past a tree. A developer on Reddit summed it up perfectly. Nanite is powerful, but if you're not rebuilding your pipeline around it, it's more of a liability than an upgrade. And that's exactly what happened to a lot of teams, especially smaller and mid-sized solutions that didn't have the time or resources to reinvent their asset workflows from scratch. So they did what made sense at the time. They upgraded to Unreal Engine 5, kept their old methods, and hoped the new tech would smooth it over. But Nanite wasn't forgiving. It expects your pipeline to play by its rules, and if it doesn't, you're gonna feel it. Which is why Ark Survival Ascended, a remaster of a game from 2015, launched with worse performance than the original. The assets clearly look a lot better, sure, but the infrastructure beneath them just couldn't carry all the weight. Now, Nanite solved the polycount problem, but in the process, it introduced a new problem. complexity. And most teams didn't realize they were in over their heads until players started stuttering. When Epic first revealed Unreal Engine 5, the thing that really blew me away wasn't the triangles, it was the lighting. Lumen was the headline feature. Real-time global illumination, dynamic bounce lighting. No more baking shadows, no more weird lighting bugs. You just placed a light in your scene, hit play, and watch the world come alive with reflections, color, soft shadows, the whole package. And the demo they showed, the Matrix Awakens experience, sold that dream perfectly. You walk through a city that seemed to light itself in real time. Puddles were reflecting buildings. Car windows reflected realistically. There were no cheats, no cube maps, no pre-baked anything. It was Epic's way of saying, you'll never need light maps again. And I'll be honest, at first, it felt like magic until I started noticing the cracks. Because Lumen is optimized for beauty, but not really for motion. And the moment things started moving fast, that magic kind of breaks. Once I started digging into how it actually works, it made a lot more sense. Lumen fakes real-time lighting using a combination of screen space data and software ray tracing. It's constantly watching what the camera sees and simulating how light would bounce inside that view, which is really clever, but also really fragile. To hold it all together, it leans heavily on something called TAA, or temporal anti-aliasing. And if you've ever noticed modern games that look like a little smeared, like someone smeared Vaseline on the screen, that's normally TAA trying to blend lighting across frames to hide the seams. Now, it looks great when you're standing still, but the second the camera moves, especially in action-heavy games, everything starts to come apart a little bit. You get ghosting trails behind characters, which you've probably seen before, lighting that lags behind explosions for half a second, reflections that like flicker in and out, shadows that feel like they're trying to catch up with the gameplay. Now, Lumen can look incredible, but it really shines in the games that are slow, cinematic, and carefully framed. Games like Hellblade 2, where every camera movement is deliberate and the world is built around its controlled lighting. But if you're building anything fast-paced, like an open-world RPG, a Souls-like, a shooter, Lumen then starts to buckle under the weight of dynamic gameplay. And that's the deeper issue here. Epic built a lighting system that makes games look like movies. But games aren't movies. They move, they react, they break in unexpected ways. And when Lumen gets pushed outside of the demo conditions, that's exactly what it started doing. It started breaking. Unreal Engine 5 wasn't just built to make games look better, it was built to make them bigger. Seamless worlds, no loading screens, no fake doors, just one giant map that streams in as you explore. The system behind that promise is something called world partition, Epic's new way of handling open world data. Instead of developers manually setting up streaming or loading zones, Unreal Engine 5 now breaks the entire map into a giant grid. Each piece, called a cell, loads and unloads automatically based on where the player is and what they can see. And in the Matrix Awakens demo, it looked flawless. You could walk through a living city on a PlayStation 5 with no cuts, no hitches, no pop-in, everything just worked. That's just a tech demo. In real games, it's a lot messier. Each of those cells isn't just geometry, they contain AI, collision, scripting, lighting data, nav meshes, audio, everything, absolutely everything. And loading all of that doesn't happen instantly. It runs in the background, which means if a player moves faster than the engine can stream, you get hiccups. You've probably felt it before. You get like a brief pause or like a little bit of pop in, an enemy spawning in like a second too late, like a weird delay right as you enter a new biome. You probably have felt it even if you didn't know what caused it. In Jedi Survivor, traversal stutters were one of the most common complaints. Not during combat, but when you move between areas, especially early on. It wasn't even a lighting bug, just the engine trying to stream in data fast enough to keep up with the player. Even the day before, for all of its other problems, showed classic signs of streaming stress. Textures popping in late, empty rooms that suddenly snapped into place, terrain failing to load until you got right on top of it. These weren't isolated bugs. They're what happens when the streaming system gets overloaded. World partition is powerful, but it's not magic. It works best when a game is built around its expectations. That means carefully controlling player speed. It means designing movement around predictable paths. It means knowing exactly what data is being loaded where and when. And if the planning isn't there, that's when things get a little freaky. Unreal Engine 5 also retired the old world composition system. So if you're working in Unreal now, world partition isn't optional. It's the default. And if your team doesn't restructure for it, if they just port over Unreal Engine 4's assets and hope for the best, problems follow. big ones. Now, to be fair, there are tools that help with this. Unreal Engine 5 has data layers, control volumes, and some preloading logic. You can design around world partition, but it takes testing, budget, time, and a team that knows what they're working with. And a lot of the games that have launched on Unreal Engine 5 early didn't have any of that. So they streamed the world, but not always correctly. There's one more thing that's really been bothering me. It might be the most confusing part of all of this. Unreal Engine 5 has made game development look easier than ever. The engine's free. You get mega scans, motion capture data, characters, high-end environments. You can literally download a cinematic quality city with animated cars, reflections, and lighting that looks like a movie. It's wild. You can open Unreal, drag in a few assets, and have something that looks like a trailer for the next Ubisoft game without even writing a single line of code. But here's the problem. Looking AAA is easy now. Running AAA is really freaking hard because visuals are now free, but polish still costs time, experience, and systems. So now we're seeing this wave of indie games that look incredible until you press start. That's when everything breaks. You get stutters, pop-in, physics glitches, memory spikes. You go from, oh, this could be the next big thing to, oh, this is basically early access. And it's not a handful of games. This is becoming normal. Steam is filled with gorgeous screenshots that collapse on contact. And generally, it's not because the game devs don't care. I mean, some don't. And a lot of game developers are genuinely lazy. I don't think there's any denying that. But the main problem is Unreal Engine 5 gives you the power to make things look professional without the support network to make them perform that way. It's a trap disguised as a shortcut. And it's brutal because now even tiny studios are expected to meet visual standards set by billion-dollar teams. Players see Unreal Engine 5 in the trailer and subconsciously expect something polished, which is fair. But what they're getting is often more proof of concept held together by duct tape and a dream. Unreal Engine 5 makes starting a game easier than it's ever been, but finishing one that actually runs, that's never been harder. It's created this strange pressure loop. Everyone has access to the same tools, but not the same pipelines. And when that gap shows up on screen, it feels like a failure, even when it's just reality. And even if an Unreal Engine 5 game runs fine, there's still this other problem that keeps bothering me. They're all starting to look the same, aren't they? Not ugly, just low effort, like visually interchangeable. The lighting looks good, the environments look polished, but something about it feels like deja vu. I'll watch a trailer on like a brand new RPG and I'll think like, wait, haven't I seen this before? You know what I'm talking about, like the shiny armor, the volumetric fog, mossy rocks. It could be Avowed or Atlas Fallen or that weird Golem game. They all just blend together. And all of these games use Unreal Engine 5. But the issue isn't the engine. At least I don't think so. It's more the lack of identity. Unreal Engine 5 gives you amazing tools out of the box. Lumen, Nanite, virtual shadows, all the post-processing bells and whistles. So naturally, a lot of devs lean into those out-of-the-box settings. Because why wouldn't you? It looks good. But here's the catch. So does every other Unreal Engine 5 game. If you're not deliberately pushing for a unique art style, you end up with a game that feels like it was assembled from the same asset packs as everyone else. Not because you're copying, but because the engine's default look is just that strong and that consistent. Now there are exceptions. Games that absolutely break them all. Marvel Rivals, for example, looks incredible. Not because it's ultra realistic, but because it's bold. Bright colors, strong silhouettes, stylized shaders, it feels just fun to look at. Same with Hi-Fi Rush. Sharp art direction, confident lighting, and a cel-shaded style that knows exactly what it's going for. It's punchy, it's expressive, and it's built in Unreal Engine as well. I feel like these games prove that it's not the engine's fault. It's what you do with it. But a lot of studios don't have the time or room to take risks with style because they're already drowning in optimization issues, deadlines, and trying to hit that AAA polish benchmark. So what do? They default to what works. And when everyone is doing that, well, that's how we end up here with a whole generation of games that technically look amazing, but creatively they feel kind of forgettable. Photorealism used to be the end goal. Now it's just the baseline. Style is the new frontier. I mean, look at this channel. Stylized Station is the whole point of this channel. And if developers don't start investing in strong art direction again, no matter how powerful the engine gets, we're just gonna keep ending up in the same place. Games that look expensive, but don't look like anything. Ultra realism is the default. Every game is technically impressive, but creatively, kind of forgettable. And it's not a hardware issue or a toolset issue. These teams are all using the same features, the same rendering systems, the same assets. So here's what I don't get. Why does Fortnite work so well? Seriously, big name releases have launched with stutters, shader delays, broken lighting, and traversal issues, and meanwhile, Fortnite updating every week and running smooth across every platform, even mobile. And it's not ducking the new tech. Fortnite runs on Nanite, it runs on Lumen, it uses world partition. This isn't a special case version of the engine, it's all using the same stuff. So, what gives? Turns out, Fortnite isn't just a game anymore. It's Epic's live testing ground. Every new feature, every new lighting system, geometry pipeline, world streaming logic, it gets shipped into Fortnite first. They watch it break under pressure, they tune it on the fly and fix the pain points inside their own pipeline. By the time it's released to other game developers, they already know what works for them. And that's not some shady backroom thing they're doing. It's smart engineering. But here's the problem. Most studios don't have that pipeline. They get the same engine, sure, but none of the internal systems that make it stable. No custom tools, no real-time feedback loop, no Epic engineers on speed dial, just a changelog and maybe a tech talk 6 months later. So you've got devs trying to use the most advanced game engine ever made. Without the context, that makes it usable, and that's where things start to fall apart. It's the same story with the Matrix Awakens demo or Hellblade 2. These projects looked flawless, but they were built by Epic or Epic adjacent teams. They had the support, they had the documentation, they had the deep integration that most teams don't. These dev teams adopt Unreal Engine, hoping to get these visuals, these workflows, but essentially a lot of them just end up flying blind. And when things break, they're left guessing. So now, when I see the Unreal Engine 5 logo pop up in a trailer, I don't just assume it's a good thing. I ask, is this an Epic tier production, or is this a studio trying to wrestle with a system that wasn't built for them? But look, this isn't some villain story. Epic isn't sabotaging anyone. They're aiming higher than most of us are even thinking about. Games, film, virtual production, AI workflows, architecture, training simulations. Tim Sweeney's not playing small here. He wants Unreal to be the backbone of the real-time 3D future, and Unreal Engine 5 is the first step towards that. The problem is, most game developers aren't there yet, or maybe they will never be. The tools are powerful, but they assume a pipeline that very few teams actually have, and that's where the friction comes from. Not necessarily because the tech is broken. I mean, maybe it is a little bit, but it's more because the expectations are starting to outpace reality. So maybe the real question isn't, does Unreal Engine 5 work? It's who can actually use it? And if this is the next era of what 3D creation looks like, then who gets to build it? The studios with Fortnite scale infrastructure, or the rest of us still trying to keep up?